Imagine with me, the electricity bill collector comes to your door. He calls out, "Electricity? Electricity." You answer, "Yes, how much?" He tells you the bill is £2 million. 2 million? You heard that right. The people of Zimbabwe faced this for years. The electricity bill, water bill, or even a small shopping trip. You go in with 2 eggs and a juice, and the total is in the billions. One loaf of bread once reached 30 billion Zimbabwean dollars. Even vending machines stopped working. Why? Because there wasn't enough space for millions of coins just to get a can of Pepsi. So what happened? How did Zimbabwe reach this point? Welcome to the channel. But before we start, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Zimbabwe is a landlocked country in southern Africa. It has breathtaking nature and very fertile land, perfect for farming. In fact, it was once called the Breadbasket of Africa because of its agricultural production, especially wheat. But at the same time, this country is, in a way, cursed. Why cursed? Because Zimbabwe is rich in valuable minerals like gold, diamonds, platinum, and copper. You might ask, how can all these minerals be a curse? These resources made Zimbabwe a huge target for colonialism over the years. In the late 19th century, the British South Africa Company occupied the country with force, chasing its mineral wealth. Later, it became a British colony known as Southern Rhodesia, under self-rule. This lasted until the 1980s when Zimbabwe finally gained independence on April 18, 1980. The first election after independence saw the rise of the National Party. Robert Mugabe became the country's leader. When Mugabe took power, he began to strengthen his control. He gave himself the authority to dissolve parliament and declare martial law. He crushed his opposition. Although the people suffered from widespread corruption at the time, the real suffering was yet to come. The seeds of the economic crisis started in the early 1990s. Mugabe decided to right the wrongs of British colonization. He took land from the white farmers and redistributed it to Zimbabweans. But there was a big problem. Most of the people who received land had no experience in farming. This led to a significant drop in agricultural production. With it, food prices skyrocketed. Within just 10 years, Zimbabwe's agricultural sector collapsed. On top of that, Mugabe's land reforms drew international criticism. This led to severe international sanctions. Foreign investments disappeared. The economy spiraled. So what did Mugabe do to fix the crisis? Like a 7-year-old with a piggy bank, he said, "We need money, so let's print it." He ordered the central bank to print massive amounts of Zimbabwean dollars. He needed to cover the costs of Zimbabwe's participation in the Second Congo War. But it seems he didn't understand what inflation is. When there's too much money circulating without boosting production, the value of the currency collapses. Prices soared. At one point, daily inflation reached 88%. The price of goods would double every day. Imagine buying a bottle of oil for $20 today, then $40 tomorrow, then $80 the next day. Inflation went out of control, rising from 98% to 100%. Then it hit 200%. At the height of the crisis in 2008 and 2009, inflation reached 80 billion% in 1 month. Unemployment hit 80%. Workers left their jobs because their wages weren't enough for even the basics. The cost of living became unimaginable. A single loaf of bread cost 30 billion Zimbabwean dollars. In a BBC documentary, a Zimbabwean man was seen pushing a cart loaded with cash to buy bread. When asked if he was afraid of being robbed, he said, "I'm afraid they'll steal the cart, not the money." People stopped counting money. They waited instead. Mugabe's government came up with a brilliant solution to this crisis. They started printing higher denominations of currency. First, they printed $1,000 bills, then $10,000 bills. When that didn't work, they went up to $100,000 bills. Eventually, they printed bills worth billions and trillions of Zimbabwean dollars. One of the largest bills in history was printed, the 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note. That's a 1 followed by 14 zeros. And guess how much that was worth in US dollars? Just 40 cents. The paper it was printed on was worth more than the currency itself. In 2009, Zimbabwe gave up its currency entirely. They switched to using the US dollar and the South African rand. This helped inflation drop. But did the country's situation improve? In 2017, after 37 years in power, Robert Mugabe was removed from office. His former ally, Emmerson Mnangagwa, took over. At the height of the crisis in 2008, there was money, but no goods. In 2017, it was the opposite. There were goods, but no money. So Zimbabwe reintroduced its own currency. The government promised inflation wouldn't get out of control like before. In 2017, inflation was at 300%. This seemed like a big improvement compared to the madness of before. But by 2020, inflation had climbed back to 622%. Zimbabwe has struggled to recover, despite efforts to boost agriculture and mining. Currently, more than 7.5 million people live below the poverty line. Half of the population suffers from hunger. In 2020, the World Food Program warned that millions in Zimbabwe were at risk of starvation. The country that was once the breadbasket of Africa has become one of the poorest nations on the continent. And that's the story. Who made it this far? You're one of the coolest people. Don't forget to like the video before you go so we know how many of you made it to the end. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, let us know in the comments.